I'll make the usual customary statement in the beginning, following which we will have questions and answers and other comments by me and my colleagues. Over the past 3 days, that is during 1st, 3rd and 4th of October, the Monetary Policy Committee discussed and evaluated the recent macroeconomic and financial developments and the outlook. Taking into consideration all available information and analysis, the MPC voted unanimously to reduce the policy repo rate by 25 basis points, with 5 members voting to reduce the policy rate by 25 basis points. The MPC also decided to continue with the accommodative stance as long as it is necessary to revive growth, while ensuring that inflation remains within the target. I would like to express my gratitude to the MPC members for the discussions we had and their deep insights and experience, which are reflected in the policy decision and the resolution that has just been released on the website of the Reserve Bank of India. I also want to thank our teams in the RBI for their continued high-quality support to the MPC's deliberations with their hard work, research and logistics. Let me begin by giving a brief overview of the salient aspects of the MPC's deliberations. In its view, the global economy has lost further momentum since August 2019 meeting of the MPC, with trade and geopolitical tensions purveying heightened uncertainty. Among advanced economies, the slowdown in the second quarter of calendar 2019 appears to have extended into the third quarter as well. For emerging market economies, the worsening global economic and trade environment is weighing upon their macroeconomic performance. Crude oil prices were pulled down by softer demand and adequate supplies until mid-September disruptions in refineries in Saudi Arabia, but normalization has occurred faster than expected. Global financial markets have remained unsettled, with bouts of volatility in response to pessimism over global growth prospects. Against this backdrop, central banks across the world are becoming increasingly accommodative in their monetary policy stances, aided by benign inflation conditions. With regard to domestic economy, the slump in real GDP growth to 5% in the first quarter of 1920 has been followed by generally weaker high-frequency indicators for the second quarter. Industrial production was lower in July 2019 on a year-on-year basis, pulled down mainly by manufacturing. The production of capital goods and consumer durables contracted. The output of 8 core industries contracted in August, with production of coal, electricity, crude oil and cement decelerating or going into contraction. The manufacturing PMI for September 2019 was flat, though still in expansion zone. High-frequency indicators suggest that services sector activity weakened in July-August. Indicators of rural and urban demand continued to slow down in July and August. The Reserve Bank's Consumer Confidence Survey also shows weak consumer sentiment, especially relating to non-essential items. On the positive side, there has been a rapid catch-up in the southwest monsoon rainfall after an initial delay in its onset. By September 30th, 2019, the cumulative all India rainfall surpassed the long period average by 10%, while the first advance estimates of major kharif crops for 2019-20 are only 0.8% lower than last year's fourth advance estimates. The prospects for Rabi 2019 season have brightened, with live storage of water in major reservoirs as on September 26, 2019 being 115% of the live storage of the corresponding period of the previous year and 121% of average storage level over the last 10 years. Abundant rains in August and September has also led to improved soil moisture conditions in most parts of the country. Overall, Indian agriculture is well positioned to lead the recovery, which augurs well for rural employment and income and the revival of domestic demand. In the industrial sector, consumer non-durables, intermediate goods have posted sustained expansion during 2019-20 so far, and have emerged as potential growth drivers. Moreover, manufacture and construction sector activity look somewhat better in August as per the IIP data. Among services sector indicators, domestic air passenger traffic also accelerated in August. Turning to external sector, with merchandise imports contracting faster than exports, the trade deficit narrowed during July-August 2019. Higher net services receipts and private transfer receipts helped contain the current account deficit to 2% of GDP in Q1 19-20 from 2.3% a year ago. On the financing side, net foreign direct investment rose to $17.7 billion in April to July 2019 from $11.4 billion a year ago. Net foreign portfolio investment, excluding the voluntary retention route, was of the order of $3.3 billion during April-September 2019 as against net outflow of $11.5 billion in the same period last year. Net disbursals of external commercial borrowings rose to $8.2 billion during April-August 2019 as against net repayments of $0.2 billion during the same period a year ago. India's foreign exchange reserves were at $434.6 billion on October 1st, 2019, an increase of $21.7 billion over end March 2019. On the inflation front too, there have been positive developments. Consumer price headline inflation has moved in a narrow range of 3.1 to 3.2% between June and August. While food inflation picked up, fuel prices moved into deflation. And inflation, excluding food and fuel, softened in a broad-based manner in August and offset the firming up of food prices. Inflation expectations of households rose by 20 basis points for the 1 year ahead horizon, but this possibly reflected households' adaptive expectations in response to the rise in food prices in recent months. Manufacturing firms see weaker pricing power in Q3, which renders the outlook for selling prices benign. Overall, liquidity in the system remained in surplus in August and September. Reflecting easy liquidity conditions, the weighted average call rate WACR traded below the policy repo rate in August and September. However, monetary transmission remains work in progress. As against the cumulative policy repo rate reduction of 110 basis points during February to August, the weighted average lending rate WLR on fresh rupee loans of commercial banks declined by 29 basis points. Taking into account these developments and the impact of recent monetary policy rate cuts, the MPC has revised CPI inflation projections slightly upwards to 3.4% in Q2 1920, but retained its projections for H2 1920 at 3.5 to 3.7%. For Q1 2021, inflation is projected at 3.6% with risks evenly balanced. Real GDP growth for 1920 has now been revised downwards from 6.9% in August policy to 6.1%. That is 5.3% in Q2 1920 and the range of 6.6 to 7.2% for H2 1920 with risks evenly balanced. GDP growth for Q1 2021 has also been revised downwards to 7.2%. Noting that the output gap has widened since its last meeting, the MPC was of the view that continuing slowdown warrants intensified efforts to restore growth momentum. Recent measures announced by the government are likely to help strengthen private consumption and spur private investment activity. With policy space available on account of inflation expected to remain below the target in the remaining period of 1920 and Q1 2021, the MPC decided to reduce the policy rate by 25 basis points and continue with the accommodative stance as long as it is necessary to revive growth while ensuring that inflation remains within the target. Now I shall address some of the developmental and regulatory policy measures undertaken today for strengthening regulation and supervision, broadening and deepening of financial markets, and improving the payment and settlement systems. On regulation and supervision, microfinance institutions play an important role in delivering credit to those in the bottom of the economic pyramid. Accordingly, the household income limit for borrowers of non-bank finance company microfinance institution, that is NBFC MFIs, has been increased from the current level of 1 lakh for rural areas and 1.6 lakh for urban and semi-urban areas to 1.25 lakh and rupees 2 lakh respectively. Furthermore, lending limit per eligible borrower has also been raised from rupees 1 lakh to 1.25 lakh. These measures are expected to boost MFI lendings to the bottom of the economic pyramid. In the area of financial markets, some of the recommendations of the task force on offshore rupee markets, you are aware that we had constituted this committee under the chairmanship of the former Deputy Governor of RBI, Usha Thorat. Now, some of the recommendations of this task force have now been accepted. Accordingly, domestic banks will be allowed to freely offer foreign exchange prices to all non-residents at all times out of their Indian books, either by domestic sales team or through their overseas branches. Also, rupee derivatives with settlement in foreign currency will be allowed to be traded in International Financial Service Centers, IFSCs. Other recommendations of the committee are under consideration. The scope of non-interest bearing special non-resident rupee, that is SNRR account, has been expanded by permitting persons resident outside India to open such accounts to facilitate rupee denominated external commercial borrowings, trade credit and trade invoicing. Furthermore, restriction on the tenure of SNRR accounts, which is currently 7 years, will also be removed for these purposes. On payment and settlement systems, several measures have been announced. First, collateralized liquidity support, which is currently available till 7:45 p.m., will now be available round the clock on all NEFT working days in order to facilitate smooth settlement of National Electronic Funds Transfer, that is NEFT, on 24/7 basis for members of the public from December 2019. This will help in better funds management by the banks. Second, in order to strengthen the grievance redressal mechanism for customer complaints, it has been decided to institutionalize an internal ombudsman scheme at the large non-bank prepaid payment instruments, that is PPI issuers. These are entities who have more than 10 million prepaid instruments outstanding. Third, in order to increase digitization in Tier 3 to Tier 6 centers through wider acceptance infrastructure, and as indicated in the Payment System Vision Document 2021 of RBI, and also recommended by the Committee on Deepening of Digital Payments chaired by Sri Nandan Nilekani, it has been decided to create an Acceptance Development Fund, that is ADF. Fourth, with a view to expanding and deepening digital payments ecosystem, it has been decided that state and UT level bankers committees, that is SLBCs or UTLBCs, shall identify one district per state or UT on pilot basis in consultation with the banks and stakeholders to make it 100% digitally enabled. The identified district may be allocated to a bank with significant footprint in that district. This would enable every individual in the pilot district to make or receive payments digitally in a safe, secure, quick and affordable and convenient manner. Thank you. Just. I think we should just go, follow some order. What I will do is I'll call out one by one. Just please, I'll call out one by one. So as you know, we will, everybody will get a chance to ask questions. So let's follow some order. Yes.
Yes, Governor, thank you. This is Govardhan from the Economic Times. The MPC acknowledges the government's measures to spur demand and private consumption, but it is silent on what its impact would be on the fiscal deficit, and it's going to have almost 1.45 lakh crores dent on the revenue. Did MPC deliberate about this issue, and if it did, and what is the outcome of that? Thank you.
You see, at this point of time, it may be noted that government has made a statement that they will adhere to the fiscal deficit of the current year. So we have therefore no reason to doubt the commitment of the government to maintain the fiscal deficit number as given in the budget. And this I would say because, as you know, government has several sources of revenue. So whatever shortfall is expected because of the announcement of the corporate tax rate cuts, government have the option of increasing, making it up through other sources. But since government have come out with a statement and going by the past track record of the government, we have no reason to doubt the statement of the government, and we go by the statement made by the government that they will maintain the fiscal deficit. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Lata Venkatesh from CNBC TV 18. Further to the question on fiscal deficit, will the open market purchase policy of the Reserve Bank be only to ensure adequate liquidity in the bank system, or will it also be to force further transmission because the market may worry, the yields may be pushed up because of fiscal deficit fears?
You see, OMO is basically a liquidity instrument, and in our internal working group report, it has been also stated that now the RBI has several instruments to infuse liquidity. We have the OMOs, which has been there already, so that remains in our in our toolkit. Then we have the currency, the forex swap, which we have introduced last year. Then term repo is something which has been also added this year in the internal working group's recommendations. So therefore, so far as RBI is concerned, OMO will be done to deal with the liquidity situation, either infuse liquidity or to suck out liquidity. And in any case, RBI doesn't manage yields. Yields are market driven.
Okay, so the internal working group recommendations are accepted in that?
No, internal working group recommendations have now been, let me clarify, these are recommendations of the internal working group, and they do not represent the institutional position of the RBI. The internal working group recommendations are now placed in the public domain. We will receive the comments and observations from public and all stakeholders, and they will be taken into consideration. Then we will decide on the final framework. Please.
सर, प्रदीप पंड्या, CNBC आवाज से. सर, पैराग्राफ 22 में आपने जो कहा है कि MPC decided to continue with an accommodative stance as long as it is necessary to revive growth. इससे आप क्या संकेत देना चाहते हैं? ये खास तौर पे इसलिए रेलेवेंट है कि पॉलिसी के पहले जिन काफ़ी लोगों से हमने बात की, उनका कहना था कि 5% के करीब आप पहुंच जाएंगे अब, और 4.75 जो हिस्टोरिकली एक लो है, उसके नीचे जाने की जगह नहीं है. तो क्या इस स्टेटमेंट से आप और MPC ये संकेत दे रहे हैं कि पॉलिसी रेट के लिए ऐसा कोई लोअर बाउंड एज सच नहीं है?
नहीं, पॉलिसी रेट कितना लोअर बाउंड है इसके बारे में हम वी हैव नॉट सेड एनीथिंग. व्हाट वी वांट टू से इज दैट वी आर गिविंग सम काइंड ऑफ, ये एक तरह का आप फॉरवर्ड गाइडेंस इसको मान सकते हैं, दैट द पॉलिसी रेट as long as the growth momentum remains as it is, until the growth is revived, RBI will continue to remain in an accommodative mode. And इसका ये उससे आप नहीं निकाल सकते हैं कि मिनिमम रेट क्या है, मिनिमम रेपो रेट कहाँ पे जाके RBI will take a pause. It is not possible to comment on that at this particular point of time. All that it says is to give a clear indication that RBI will continue with the accommodative stance as long as it is necessary, and as long as it is necessary to revive the growth momentum.
सर, क्या जो हिस्टोरिकल लो है उसको एक लोअर बाउंड के तौर पे आप देखते हैं, या MPC देखते हैं या नहीं?
नहीं, लोअर बाउंड के बारे में मेरे लिए अभी कुछ कहना पॉसिबल नहीं है. दैट विल अगेन डिपेंड ऑन डिलिबरेशंस ऑफ द MPC. अगले जो MPC का डिलिबरेशन होगा वो डिसीजन लिया जाएगा.
Sir, this is Anup Roy from Business Standard. Government is now asking 30,000 crore interim dividend from the RBI, but we understood from Jalan Committee report that there will be no concept of interim dividend. Can you please clarify?
You see, I have only also, as you said that you saw it in the media, I also saw it in the media. I am not aware of any such demand from the government for payment of interim dividend.
गवर्नर स्वाति खंडेलवाल फ्रॉम जी बिजनेस, मेरा सवाल है, आपने 25 बेसिस पॉइंट जो कट किया, मार्केट की एक्सपेक्टेशन 40 बेसिस पॉइंट थी, क्या वजह रही दैट आपने 40 बेसिस पॉइंट तक नहीं सोचा जाया जाए, क्योंकि अभी भी रिवाइवल ग्रोथ हम नहीं देख पा रहे हैं, तो क्या आपको लगता है 25-40 की तरफ जाना क्यों नहीं हुआ? पहला। दूसरा, ये आपने 110 बेसिस पॉइंट की बात की अभी तक जो है, और मॉनेटरी ट्रांसमिशन आपने बोला वर्क इन प्रोग्रेस है, कब तक आप एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं स्टैगर्ड और जो इनकम्प्लीट है ये अलाइन हो जाएगा? बिकॉज वहाँ अगर होता है तो हम ग्रोथ रिवाइवल की बात कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि अभी भी क्रेडिट ग्रोथ अपटिक नहीं देख पा रहे हैं हम बैंक्स की, तो आप उनको क्या कह रहे हैं?
सी, हमने एक फॉरवर्ड गाइडेंस मैंने जैसे कहा कि वी हैव गिवन ए क्लियर इंडिकेशन दैट द अकोमोडेटिव स्टैंस जो है वो कंटिन्यू करेगा, और we have now cut the policy rate by 110 plus another 25, so 135 basis points. So one has to also see its impact, and it does take time for the impact to filter in into the real economy. So therefore we'll have to see the impact of all these policy rate cuts. We'll have to also see how the fiscal measures which government have taken over the last few months in 3 separate installments, and then of course the corporate tax rate cut. So how these impact the real economy, and at this point of time 25 basis points was therefore the call which the RBI took, which the MPC has taken. Michael, you would like to add anything to this?
Okay.
Right. Thank you. I think let me come this side now. Yeah.
Governor, I was going to say you obviously prefer the right of center. so I'm going to ask you a slightly different
No, we have to
question.
be on right lines always.
So I wanted to ask you, Governor, something that has not been discussed, is that was there any discussion at all in the MPC about the ongoing NBFC crisis and what happened in the Punjab PMC Cooperative Bank? And in hindsight, since it was a scheduled bank, did the RBI really, could you have done it better, because you had CRR, you had SLR, you also have lender of last resort because it was a scheduled bank. And we saw in a very similar, much larger private bank, RBI did manage what was virtually a run on the bank. So could we have avoided the kind of panic and the worries now? See, it may not be warranted, but there are genuine worries about the strength of the banking system, including commercial, cooperative banks, private banks, district cooperative banks, everything. So was there any discussion of that? Because if we don't have financial stability, then there's inflation growth, everything becomes quite meaningless. So was there any discussion?
You see, these points which you mentioned about the banking sector or cooperative banks or NBFCs, this is not within the purview of the MPC. So therefore, MPC does not discuss these issues. But since you have raised the point, I would like to say that so far as RBI is concerned, as we see it, in fact, I would like to make it very clear, and as we have already issued a press statement sometime last week, I just want to preempt some of your questions. Let me say that the Indian banking sector remains sound and stable, and there is no reason for any unnecessary panic. In fact, sometimes unnecessary rumors can create a panic situation. So through you, I would like to appeal the members of the public and all depositors not to believe in such rumors. Our banking system remains sound and stable. And with regard to cooperative banking sector, as you pointed out, individual cases, it's not proper for me to discuss. And in any case, this case is already under investigation of the Economic Offences Wing. But having said that, let me make a mention that as soon as, this issue came to our notice, RBI has acted very swiftly and very promptly. On 23rd, it came to our notice just a few days before we appointed the administrator on 23rd. And in the last 12 to 13 days after appointment of the administrator, you have to see what RBI has done. We have appointed the administrator. We have appointed, now we have declared that we are going to have an advisory committee. We have reviewed the liquidity position. The administrator internally has reviewed the liquidity position. Based on that, we have announced first, the withdrawal to be enhanced to 10,000 per depositor. And now yesterday, and yesterday to 25,000 rupees per depositor. And number of other steps we have taken. A complaint has been filed with the Economic Offences Wing, and so number of steps have been taken, and RBI has acted very swiftly. And again, to preempt one more question, let me say that one incident cannot be used and should not be used, we feel, to generalize about the health of the cooperative banking sector.
Question, sir, was would liquidity support followed by a PCA have been a better way of ensuring that we didn't have this kind of adverse public fallout?
You see, where PCA is required, RBI will, where PCA is appropriate, that is prompt corrective action is appropriate, RBI will use the PCA framework. And recently, again, to preempt one more question which may come up, let me say that one private sector bank we have placed very recently, we have placed it under our prompt corrective action framework. And on this, again, because of various kinds of reports that are being, various reports which are now coming out, let me say that prompt corrective action framework is nothing new. In the past, RBI has put banks under prompt corrective action to ensure that timely steps are taken to put the bank, to bring the back on rails. When there are certain deviations from certain, regulatory framework, we put a bank under prompt corrective action, and the prompt corrective action involves that the bank is required to take certain steps to correct those regulatory deviations or deficiencies. So therefore, this is nothing new, and it is a kind of a corrective measure. It gives an opportunity to bank to correct itself, and that is how it should be seen. And wherever PCA is required, wherever our criteria demands that the PCA framework is required, we will use the PCA framework. Where other measures like administrative appointing an administrator is concerned, it will be used in appropriate cases. Yes, please.
May I follow up on this? Therefore, should one assume, since this particular bank has been put under PCA, it was to get a lot of capital if it were allowed to merge with India Bulls? Should we therefore assume that RBI has taken a call that that merger is not coming?
No, I think it's a speculative question, and as long as the decision is given out in the public domain, it is not correct on our part. And as long as we decide and we let out the decision in public domain, I would not like to comment on this individual proposals. And as I have said, individual cases, this is not the right, it's not proper to talk about individual cases in a conference like this.
Sir, on cooperative bank,
I'll come back.
Thank you, Governor. Mayur Shetty from the Times of India. So you had recently said about the limited fiscal space available with the government. And after that, there has been the corporate tax cut, and also we've seen GST numbers coming down. So do you think there is any fiscal room going ahead, or will all the work have to be done by RBI?
No, I think your main question relates to the economy, reviving the economy. And I think government has announced 3 rounds of measures. They have announced a very big, the corporate tax rate cut is a very big measure which they have taken. And it is definitely overall, I have on record, I have said that it is net positive for the economy. And again, you are bringing back the fiscal question. Government has said that they will stick to the fiscal deficit, and I have no reason to doubt that. Yes, please.
Governor Ira Duggal from Bloomberg Quint. Sir, actually, allow me 2 small questions. One is on growth. You've come down to 6.1 from 6.9. Dr. Patra will correct me, but in recent memory, it doesn't. I can't remember such a sharp cut from the Reserve Bank of India. The MPR gives some analysis, and one thing it does say is that there is weakness in employment-intensive sectors. Does the RBI believe that there is a significant part of the growth slowdown which is coming in from wages, employment growth? The other problem, and again, the MPR...
No, I missed that last part of the question because of some disturbance here.
Should I start again?
No, just the last part.
I just wanted to know whether the RBI believes that a large part or a significant part of the slowdown is linked to employment generation in the economy and wage growth in the economy, not just in rural areas, but also in urban areas. And the other problem is on the chart which shows the flow of financial resources to the commercial sector. There is again a sharp drop in the April to September period compared to last year. With credit growth not picking up from banks, leave alone non-banks, how does the RBI intend to correct both price and availability of money?
You see, price is a function of the market. Price is a function of the market, and so far as we are concerned, to ensure better transmission, we have come out with this external benchmark requirement. Now that is already there. And with regard to the slowdown, whether it is due to decline in income, both rural and urban, I think it is very clearly explained in the minutes of in the resolution of the MPC. And rural demand or the urban demand contraction is a reflection of various factors. It could be sentiment, it could be stress on income, it could be falling domestic savings. So it's a complex set of factors which is reflecting upon this. Michael, would you like to supplement this? That's it.
Hi, sir. Bijoy from Cogensis. Just two questions. One is on transmission again. In the MPR, you actually note that the small savings are again impeding policy transmission. And we note that existing outstanding loans, the price has actually gone up in the period that you all have actually cut your repo rate by 110 basis points. It's gone up by 7 basis points is what you calculate. Is there any way you can convince the government to actually stick to the formula that they had accepted on small saving schemes? Because they clearly seem to be playing to a different tune than the formula itself. And on the second question on offshore markets and non-resident rupee account, if you could just clarify on whether this is because increasingly the pricing of the rupee seems to be driven by external factors like NDF, which is why you all have decided to open up and first set up the Thorat committee report and now gradually opening up so that you can attract investors into rupee market.
You see, on the first question with regard to the small savings, I have earlier said that on various issues the RBI is engaged with the government on discussions, and all these discussions are internal, various issues, and that would obviously include the small savings rates. And with regard to the other question, the second question which you asked, you see the NDF market, it was developing offshore. And the size of compared to the offshore market, the size of the Indian market was shrinking. So therefore, that issue had to be addressed. And second issue is that, India is now getting increasingly integrated to the global economy. And so therefore, it was necessary for us to, look at the changing environment and ensure, that India responds to this, its growing integration to the global economy. And also, we have a roadmap for gradual capital account convertibility. So all these aspects have been kept in mind. That is why this committee was constituted. We have a very cautious path, a careful and cautious, a carefully drawn path in this direction. So this is basically a consequence of that. Yes.
Thank you, Governor. Manojit Saha from The Hindu. I also have two questions. One is that the growth has been revised by 80 basis points. It's very sharp revision. But why the rate cut was only 25 basis points? 25 basis points is the usual rate cut. Last time it was 35. So why only 25? Because it seems you are very concerned about growth. The second question is that this bank in question was hiding NPA for the last 8 years. Why was RBI unable to spot that something is going wrong in the bank?
See, again, individual cases I would not like to comment. We are looking into all aspects of this particular bank which you are mentioning, and the matter is now under investigation by the Economic Offences Wing. So therefore, at this point of time, I would not like to go into further details. And with regard to 25 basis rate cut, you have to see it on the back of 110 basis points which has been done. So it is 110 plus another 25, so it is 135, and over a period of between February to October, so which is about 8 or 9 months period. So you have to see that, and I think I have already answered that question a little while earlier. Yes, please.
Sir, Gopika from Mint. I have two questions as well. One is, what is the impact of corporate tax rate cut? Has RBI done any study to assess the impact of the corporate tax rate cut on the economy? And second is, you said we shouldn't single out a cooperative bank, but history has shown that there have been several failures in the cooperative banking system. So how many more failures is RBI willing to allow before you initiate a conversation or discussion with the government to amend the regulations around cooperative banks?
You see, RBI would not allow a cooperative bank to collapse. cooperative banks develop their own problem because of so many other factors. So, when you say that RBI would allow, RBI obviously cannot allow a cooperative bank to collapse. And the discussion with government with regard to the regulatory provisions of cooperative banks, which as you know are, different from the other scheduled commercial banks. So that is an ongoing process, that is a continuing process. We are in discussion with the government. Let me come back to this side, yeah.
Sir, in the last few years, PNB scam has happened, before last year. Last year, again, IL&FS happened. Then this year, again, PMC has happened, actually. So is RBI trying to do something about fixing the supervisory inspection mechanism?
You see,
one more thing, is there any accountability fixed at the regulatory level, actually?
You see, so far as supervision is concerned, we have already announced formation of a separate department for supervision and building up a separate cadre of officers for supervision. So the department has been formed and it is work in progress, and so therefore those steps have been taken. And with regard to fixing up responsibility, I have mentioned that all aspects of this PMC bank issue is being looked into, and at this point of time it will not be, I will not be able to go into further details.
Governor, coming back to the fiscal question, how worried are you, at least the market seems to be very worried about the crowding out effect that this corporate rate tax will have on the fisc? That's one. And
No, but as long as the fiscal deficit is maintained,
yeah, but
the crowding out effect does not, there is no, the facts, it doesn't alter. Whatever was the effect, it is the same.
So
over the past few years, RBI as the debt manager has ensured that the borrowing program of the government goes through in a very non-disruptive manner. So that will be it will continue to be so.
Right. And the other question was, we've spoken about the shadow banking issues time again, we've met. When do you see the worst is actually over? Because we're seeing fresh skeletons coming out almost on a daily basis, if not weekly basis.
No, you see, I have answered this question earlier. The NBFCs, sector, and now the HFCs, which has now been transferred to RBI for regulation purposes, we are monitoring the top NBFCs very closely. We are our supervision, our supervision and monitoring is very close and intense with regard to the non-banking finance companies. Now, so therefore, at this point of time, you have to also keep in mind that, based on our 7th June circular, wherever there are, signs of some default or some signs of stress, the banks are also now signing intercreditor agreement, and they are dealing with such cases. And overall, NBFC said, the NBFC sector remains under RBI's very intense and close supervision. You would like to add anything? Yeah. I think.
Hi, sir.
Achha, okay.
Okay. Sorry. Hi, sir. Pandika from Money Control. So I have two questions, both regarding the asset quality of banks. The health of the banks. So you said we should not actually take one incident and generalize it to the entire segment of the banks, but it has.
I said that with reference to the cooperative bank.
Banks.
Failure of one.
Yes. Yeah. But it has actually triggered a lot of fear in the depositors for cooperative banks, because this bank appeared to be very healthy. It was posting profits, and all of a sudden all of this comes out. So my question is that does an incident like this warrant a change in the way these banks are actually regulated? Would RBI prefer that cooperative banks is completely regulated by RBI and there's no shared authority here?
You see, have you completed? Yeah.
There's another question.
No, let me answer one by one.
Okay.
So you see, every such incident is an experience. So based on this experience, we will give a fresh look at the regulatory framework that is in existence, and if any changes are required, we will take it up with the government.
but RBI favors that it should be completely brought under.
No, I would not like to, I cannot say what we will favor. It will depend on the outcome of our review.
Okay, understood. The other question is about the government's efforts. So one of the measures that they announced was that banks, including public sector and private, would both be setting up these loan fairs to push out credit growth. Now, what we've understand from the past experiences, these kind of activities are actually driven by targets, even at the branch levels, and there's less thought given to the due diligence, and there is. So, is there a risk for asset quality coming out of this kind of measures?
If you see the government circular which has been issued, the government letter which has been issued to the banks, it does make a specific mention that the banks are required to follow the prudent lending principles. The term they have used is prudent lending principles. The government have highlighted that, and so far as RBI is concerned, during our supervision and during our interaction at my level, either in a group or individually, in every interaction with the chiefs of public sector banks as well as private sector banks, we do emphasize the need for a prudent lending.
Governor,
No, I think she wanted to ask something, then I'll come this side.
On the cooperative bank side, again, in the public mind, the distinction between the inspection and audit doesn't exist. So they're looking at the regulator to be performing probably an audit, not just an inspection. So that is one part. Couple of policies ago, RBI had asked cooperative banks to come forward and convert to small finance banks and things like that, but not a single cooperative bank seems to have come forward. Is there anything that you can do to engage with the government and the state governments to get this whole cooperative bank system changed? Because on their own, they don't seem to be coming forward to change anything.
You see, I mean, I think you have yourself answered the question. On their own, they have not come forward. And cooperative banks, the structure of cooperative banks, they're not shareholders, they're members. So therefore, that is the big difference, and there are legal issues also involved. But I earlier mentioned that we will look at the existing regulatory framework of the cooperative banks, and based on our internal review, whatever changes are required to be undertaken, we will take it up with the government.
Governor, lending.
Please. I'll come to one by one again.
One follow-up question.
I'll come back to you.
So
Yes.
Anand from
I'll
Business,
come there.
Anand from Business Today. So just one question on this deposit insurance cover. I mean, is there a case for a higher, deposit insurance limit? Because it hasn't been changed for the last 26 years.
There has been this demand in the past as well. The extent of deposit insurance cover, there are many elements that get into it in terms of how much percentage of deposit should get covered, how many percent of depositors should be covered. So there are many factors that will determine that. So there have been studies based on that, and of course it's still no final decision has been taken.
Has DIGC ever recommended?
I'll come that side. Yes.
So I just wanted to know if the RBI has undertaken an assessment of the risk to the financial system from real estate, and I mean direct bank credit given out by NBFCs, which also then has an impact on banks who have lent to them, and also the bond markets where investors would have invested in direct real estate paper and NBFC paper linked to real estate.
So I just wanted to add to that, sir, because lately in the last week, especially after PMC's exposure to one real estate company, this is a fresh reason to sell both the equity and the bonds of the private sector banks. I mean, the bond yields have also shot up, the prices have come down. So is there any move by RBI or government to tackle the underlying realty issue?
Underlying?
Real estate issue.
You see, with regard to the real estate sector, we annually, it, every 6 months we come out with that financial stability report. And as a part of the financial stability report, all these issues are internally analyzed. And
across all segments of across all segments, banks, NBFCs plus bond market together.
No, I mean all segments, and whether together or separately, I can't say. But all these aspects are analyzed, and because of the evolving situation, there are certain sectors which require more intense analysis or scrutiny. So it is a part of our financial stability internal studies, and we are looking at these issues. Yes, please.
Hi, sir. Bhavik Nair from the Financial Express. Now, regarding the offshore rupee markets, we have seen that according to the BIS survey, the NDF volumes have increased dramatically over the last few years. Now, you have accepted 2 of the recommendations by the task force. Do you think these recommendations would be enough to kind of bring those overseas volumes onto the onshore? Because we have come to a stage where the NDF is kind of driving the onshore rupee market.
Okay, have you concluded?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
You see, there are totally 10 recommendations which the committee has made, 10 major recommendations. And I did mention that the other recommendations of the committee are under examination. They also involve some amount of consultation with, some amount of consultations with government, some amount of consultation with the banks and with the market players. That process is on. So the remaining 8 recommendations are very much on our table and they are under consideration. As and when we'll decide, we will start issuing it. We will start issuing the circular as and when we decide.
And just one more question, sir. Yeah. Do you see any possibility, either this fiscal or the next, that there would be a possibility of a sovereign bond issuance?
I think this question should be asked to government, and recently I think the Secretary Economic Affairs has made a statement in this regard. So beyond that, I am not in a position to add anything,
Sir, Ashish from PTI. Just a small thing, you mentioned about RBI acting swiftly in wake of the PMC issue discovery. So in the past, we have seen various other moves, including mergers of banks being undertaken so as not to affect the depositor trust. In this case, why was this particular way of dealing with the crisis chosen? I'm asking this especially with the hindsight sort of knowledge of how the depositors have reacted.
You see, every case is unique. You cannot, generalize and say that, one instrumentality or one method which was used in a previous case has to be repeated here. Every case is
Particular way of dealing with the crisis chosen. I'm asking this especially with the hindsight sort of knowledge of how the depositors have reacted.
You see, every case is unique. You cannot, generalize and say that, one instrumentality or one method which was used in a previous case has to be repeated here again. Every case is unique. And based on the facts of this particular case, we have acted in the manner that we have. And we have acted very quickly as soon as it has come to our notice. We have acted very swiftly, and if you see, I spelled out the actions which have been taken in the last 10 days, and in the press note which we have issued yesterday, we have also said very clearly that the RBI sort of is continuing to monitor the situation, keeping in mind the interest of the depositor as the highest priority. I think we'll have to now conclude, so just 2-3 more questions, I'll come back.
Governor, we've been told that you recently met with some investors when you were in Singapore. This is for the global bond index. India wants to be a part of some global bond index. Just wanted to understand, has India officially started lobbying for this? And how many years down the line would we see something like this happen?
See, my meeting in Singapore, I think about a month ago, was not for inclusion of India in the global index. It was a general, interaction which we do time to time. We do interaction in Mumbai also. And I did one interaction earlier, I think in March, in Hong Kong with the investors, and this was a part of that process of interacting with the investors in various locations. And Singapore, there are lots of funds and other investors which are based in Singapore who invest in India. Yes, please. I think we have to now come to some because
just one question.
Yeah, please.
Jagdeep Chima here from BBC News. You've downgraded the growth forecast to 6.1%. How concerned are you about global trade spats? And especially between the US and India at the moment, and what effect
US and
India, and what effect that has on India's growth?
No, I think US-India, at the moment as we are talking, I think the US Commerce Secretary is on a visit to India, and both the Commerce Secretary and the Indian, the Commerce Minister have made statements that they're looking for early resolution. So I'm not privy to the discussions that are ongoing. And so far as India-US trade issues are concerned, I am quite confident that they will get resolved pretty fast. Yes.
सर अब तक के जो रेट कट्स हुए हैं, सुभाष शेर के न्यूज़ नेशन से हो, अब तक के जो रेट कट्स हुए हैं उसका ट्रांसमिशन ग्राहकों तक जाए, इसके लिए कोई मॉनिटरिंग हो रही है?
नहीं, वो तो मैंने कहा ना, एक्सटर्नल बेंचमार्क हमने इंट्रोड्यूस किया है, वो तो कॉन्स्टेंटली रेगुलरली मंथली बेसिस में हम मॉनिटर करते हैं उसको इंटरनली कितना ट्रांसमिशन हो रहा है. आई थिंक वी हैव टू कंक्लूड.
सर, लेंडिंग कैप फॉर एमएफआईज आपने बढ़ाया है 1.25 लाख. स्मॉल फाइनेंस बैंक्स के लिए कुछ हम इस डायरेक्शन में देखेंगे, वहां पर कोई चेंज नहीं.
एक तो अभी हुआ है, तो जब हो जाएगा कुछ स्मॉल फाइनेंस बैंक में, यू विल कम टू नो अबाउट इट. आई थिंक जस्ट आई थिंक
you have been monitoring the top 50 NBFCs quite closely in the last 9 months or so. But so there have been some defaults in the recent past. What are the probabilities of any one of the top 50 NBFCs that you are monitoring going to default in the next few quarters?
No, you see, I have said it earlier that it will be, I'm just repeating what I said earlier. It is our endeavor to ensure that we do not encounter failure of another large systemically important NBFC. So with that objective, we are monitoring them, and wherever required, we are, calling the management of those NBFCs, having dialogue with them, and taking issues forward, how to resolve the issues. And in some cases, I mentioned that the banks are also signing intercreditor agreement as per the 7th June circular, and trying to sort of restructure that particular loan.
Governor, one quick.
I think I'll have to conclude.
One quick question on the GDP estimate. Is it again consensus, or is there, because there's no voting over here that you tell us about in the statement? Because the monetary policy report is a little bit more downbeat. It says near term. More downbeat. It says near-term outlook is fraught with risks. So for next year, it says GDP.
No, it is unanimous. I mean,
6.1 is
there are so many deliberations which take place within the MPC, but finally we all converge.
So there's no voting on that.
No voting on the growth forecast or the inflation numbers. But I can tell you that everybody is on board, and everybody is not only on board, but everybody is okay. All the members of the MPC are okay with these numbers. The growth as well as
next year 7%.
सर, आपने जो एक एश्योरेंस दिया और एक अपील की लोगों से कि वो रूमर्स पे ध्यान ना दें, एक रिक्वेस्ट है आपसे कि आप उसको हिंदी में अगर दोहरा सकें. और दूसरी बात, क्या आप ये कह सकते हैं कि किसी और कोऑपरेटिव बैंक में लोग इस तरह से फंसेंगे नहीं, क्योंकि अब दूसरे कोऑपरेटिव बैंक से भी लोग पैसे निकाल रहे हैं. इवन प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स को लेकर वहां से पैसे निकाल.
आप देखिए, प्लीज डोंट पुट वर्ड्स इनटू माय माउथ. मैंने जैसे कहा अंग्रेजी में, उसको हिंदी में मैं कहना चाहता हूँ कि इंडियन बैंकिंग सेक्टर जो है वो साउंड एंड स्टेबल है. आई थिंक जैन साहब, आप उसको हिंदी में बोल दीजिए तो ठीक रहेगा.
आप कहेंगे तो ज्यादा बेहतर होगा.
नो, साउंड एंड स्टेबल का हिंदी टर्म मेरे आ नहीं रहा. आप बोलिए,
वो चलेगा.
बोल देंगे. नहीं, मैं बैठा हूँ ना विथ माई. सुदृढ़ है, आप बोल दीजिए हिंदी.
नहीं, जैसा गवर्नर ने कहा है और हमने अपनी एक स्टेटमेंट भी दी है कि बैंकिंग सेक्टर पूरा ही सुदृढ़ है, और अभी जो हमारे पास डेटा है उससे हमें कोई ऐसा इंडिकेशन नहीं मिल रहा है कि जिसमें कोई वरी हो. अफवाहों पर जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. यही हमारी अपील है सभी से कि अफवाहों के बेसिस पर आप कोई एक्शन ना लें.
Thank you.
Sir, congratulations for a plastic-free folder and a plastic-free water bottle. Are you all off plastic water bottles?
Yes, we have decided, and we have in fact issued a circular internally for doing away with this single-use plastic. Yeah.